Okay, so this is a full paper 2. So this is the one that involves databases, document production and presentations. This is the March 2015 one, so it's quite a recent one, but it won't include relationships on the database, so you must make sure that you can do a relationship on a database. There's a video on their YouTube channel to show you how to do that. So you work for a company called Hot House Design. You're going to perform some clerical tasks for this company. Create an evidence document which must have your name, centre number and candidate number in the header. So in Word, insert header, put in all your details at the top, and then just double click on the document to get back to it, or click on close header and footer. Save this document with your centre number and candidate number as the file name. So file, save as. When you're in the exam, you'll be using your controlled account, so you shouldn't have as many files in there, so it shouldn't be complicated to do that. Try and keep everything in the same folder, it just keeps things organised. So 20295 and then your candidate number. It then says you're going to save all screenshot evidence and other evidence in this file during the exam, and you'll need to print it before you finish. Make sure you highlight this or make some note of that, otherwise you'll forget to print it and you'll lose marks for work you've done. So you're now going to edit a document about tea production in India. So a few people have asked me when we've been doing this, how do I know what document I'm doing? The best thing to do is read ahead. So you start seeing things like set page sizes and margins, automated file names, margins again. It's clearly going to be a Word document. So if you go to the folder that you have copied and open up the document that it asks you to, you'll see that it automatically opens up in Word. First thing to do, make sure that you save it as a Word document. Otherwise, if you lose power to your computer or you have to switch it off or anything like that, then you're going to lose all of your editing. Plus the file will be too big to save anyway. So save it as a Word document. Well, it actually says here, save the document with a new file name in the format of your text editing software. So that reminds you to save it as a Word document. You need to give it a new name, so just do file save as and give it another name. Set the page size to A4 and the orientation to landscape. So page layout, size, and then choose A4, and the orientation needs to be landscape. It then says set all the margins to 4 centimeters. So in margins, and custom margins, change all of them to 4 and press OK. And then place in your evidence document screenshots to show how you set the page size, orientation and margins. So what you're going to have to do is hover over that, do a print screen, go to your Word document and paste that in. Might be worth just putting what it is that you're showing, so page size. Okay, and then also do the same with page layout. Do the same with the orientation, do a print screen of that, and also do a print screen of your custom settings, or go to custom margins and do a print screen of that, and put them all into your evidence document. Place in the header, automated file name and the path, left aligned, your candidate number and centre number right aligned. So on the Word document, insert header. Always choose blank 3 columns. The reason for that is it will automatically then align itself to your margins, which gives you a free mark. In the left hand side it said to put the file name and path. So in document info, if you just choose file path, you'll see that it also includes the file name as well. Didn't want anything in the middle, so we can delete that, and it asked for the numbers on the right. Place in the footer, name left, date centre, automated file name in the right. So insert footer, blank 3 columns, name was left, the date was right. You could just type it in, or if you go to insert, you've got date and time. To be honest, it was also on this menu up here. I didn't need to click on insert, and choose one and press OK. And on the right it wanted page numbers, so up here go to page number. Now if you choose bottom of page, it's going to delete everything that you've already typed in. So if you go to current position, plain number, it will put it in and not delete your date and your name. So we can close the header and footer. Make sure all alignments match the page orientation and margins, which they do, and make sure the headers and footers are displayed on each page, which they will be. Format the entire document into 2 equally spaced columns with a 1 centimetre gap between the columns. Control and A will highlight everything, or just highlight it with the mouse. Page layout, columns, more columns, 2 with a 1 centimetre gap. Press OK and it will do that for you. Set the text to 12-point sans serif font, fully justified with a 1.5 line space. So set it to size 12. Make sure you choose a serif font, so Times New Roman, because it has the flicks, and it needs a 1.5 line spacing and fully justified. So this is fully justified, and this is your line spacing. I'm going to set it to 1.5. Make sure there is a consistent single line space after each paragraph. Now there's different ways of doing this. You can either go to the end of each line and press enter, or you can highlight everything, and in page layout you can set spacing after to be 12 points, because that's the size of the text. Whatever you find is easier. Insert a page break before the text international T's at the start of the document. So to put a page break in, there's different ways of doing it. We can go to insert and go to page break, or we've got breaks here and we've got page break, or you can press Control and enter and it will put one in for you. Format only the first page of the document to a single column. So if you click just to the left in the margin, it will highlight the page. Go to columns and set it to 1. Check it hasn't ruined the rest of your document, and if it has, highlight it and set it back to 2 again. Make the first page a title page by adding the title, Tea Production in India. Don't miss out capital letters. Make sure you click on the left. It's a silly mark to lose. And make the title centre aligned, 48, and underlined. I'm just going to choose that as serif text just in case they want it all the same. So size was 48. It needed to be centre aligned and underlined. Below the title, enter the subtitle report by and then followed by your name. Please don't be the idiot that leaves it as followed by your name. Make sure you put in your name. Set both the title and the subtitle to a serif font. Well, we've done that. And make the subtitle italic, right 24. Italic, right and 24. Now it doesn't say it needs to be underlined, so I'm going to take out the underline, just to be on the safe side. Identify the 6 subheadings in the document and make these size 14 and bold. So we've got to look through the document. I haven't saved it for a while, so it's always a good idea to save it. Set it as bold, and I've forgotten already, size 14. So I've done one. If you use Format Painter, you can then paint each one, or you could use Control to select them all. Whatever works for you. Missed. Okay. So I think it said there were 6, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We know we've got them all. So insert the contents of the file text 2 into the document after the paragraph that ends almost bitter tea of the mountain communities of North India, which is somewhere there. So just after the paragraph, so we're going to make another little paragraph. So that file is this one. Select all the text, copy it, Control and C, or however you normally copy, and we'll paste it there. Now, if we choose keep text only, it's going to then match, hopefully, our font that we've already got. I can close that one off. Format the subheading on the text you've just inserted so it matches the font and the subheadings of the document. So the font does, but their heading doesn't, so we need to highlight that one. Change the bulleted list to use square-shaped bullets. So this is the bulleted list. We need to change that to squares. And after the last subheading, insert a table with 3 columns and 4 rows and enter the following data. So after this one, press enter. It's gone onto another page, but that's not unusual. So it's got to be 3 columns and 4 rows. So insert table, 3 columns. Is it 3 columns? Yeah, 3 columns and 4 rows. Okay. And then you've got to enter the text. Now I'm not going to type it all in because you can all type. Okay. The table should fit the column and it should match the font and size of the body text. So at the moment it's the font and size of the heading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Format Painter to highlight everything so it matches the body text, not the headings. Format only the text in the top row of the table to be bold and center aligned. So highlight it, bold and center. And then shade the top row 20 to 30% grey. So it's already highlighted. We've got 20 to 30%. If you hover over it, it comes up with a percentage. So that one's 20. And add grid lines to the table so they're visible when printed. Make only the outside border of the table a thick 3 to 4 point line. So the borders are already there. So in the table tools, if that's not there, just click into the table. Then you're going to change the border width here to 3, and then it automatically clicks on the painter, and you get this little paintbrush, and you can paint the outside of your table. It's a bit fiddly sometimes, but it's probably the easiest way to do it. There are other ways. Okay, click on border painter and that'll disappear. Okay. So we're now got to place the image MI5 image at the beginning of the sentence that starts T is consumed in both. Align it with the top of the paragraph and the left margin of the column. So the image is this one. Different ways of doing it. Right click, copy, whatever you want to do. You can just drag it and drop it. However, I've not found where it needs to be, so it might have been better to insert it. Okay. I'm going to put it there because I can't remember where it's got to go. Doesn't seem to have worked. Oh, it's gone in the table. Excellent. So I'm going to delete that. So these things happen as you're doing it. You just got to kind of roll the punches as it were. So T is consumed in both. We need to find that really. So it's there. So I'm going to go to Insert Pictures instead and go to Documents and find the picture. Okay, so it's now definitely in the right place. And align it with the top of the paragraph and the left of the margin. It might look like this. We need to resize it so it fits half of the page and the text wraps around it, so that if you use the corner it will maintain aspect ratio. So that's roughly half. In terms of wrapping, we're going to need to change it. We'll do it up here because that's always there. I'm going to change it to tight and then just use the keys on your mouse to make sure that it's roughly in line with your margins, which that looks like it is to me. It may look like this, which it does. Save the document. You're going to need to print it later. Control and S, or click on the disk, and we'll be printing it out in a bit. That's probably because we're going to add something else to it, I would imagine. That's why we're not printing it at the moment. So you're now going to prepare some reports for the company. Make sure all currency values are in pounds sterling to 2 decimal places. So it's quite nice when it's in pounds because you don't have to faff about changing it to euros or dollars. Create a database. Now you should know by now, I would hope, that a database is in Access. So open up Access. When you open up Access, click on blank desktop database and give it a sensible name. Put it in your folder that you've got in your user area. This isn't the bit where you're going to the shared area. This is the bit where you're actually saving the database. Always close table 1 so that when you go to external data you can't click on the wrong one. Now this task is slightly different. It's telling us to make a table that has these fields and then import that file into it. And although it says that, I'd still do it the way that you know, because to create it first, there's no point. So if you import this first, we can then assign these field names, and you'll see that as we're going along. So if we click on text file, browse for the file. Now you will have copied this into your user area, so it should be nice and easy to find and no one else will be using it, so you shouldn't get any errors. Press OK, have a look at the data, it looks correct, so press next. Now at this point I always say, what do I have to tick here? And you all know you're supposed to tick this. However, in this example, there aren't any field names given to us. So if we tick that, it puts those as the field names, which is clearly not right. So don't tick the box in this case. You're going to have to look at the data and decide whether or not you need to tick it. So press next. Now we've got them called field 1, field 2, field 3, etc., which isn't going to be very useful. So if we go back to the task, it tells us what they're supposed to be called: code, country, product, stock, etc. So you need to type those in along the top. So code, country, and we're going to have to type them in, otherwise it's not going to work. Product and stock, and then reorder, price, special and notes. So reorder, price, special and notes. Now at this point as well, we can also set the data types. So the first one had to be numeric or integer. Don't mess with numbers unless it's asking you to change it to currency. The next two needed to be text, which they are. Stock needed to be a number, and so did reorder. So we'll just leave those as whatever number it decided. Price needs to be numeric / currency. Now this is the only time you mess around with a number, unless it's yes, no as a boolean field. So change that to currency, and then on the special one, which was a boolean field, we've got to change it to yes, no. So you're only messing with numbers if it says boolean or currency. The last one is memo or text. Well, we've never done memo before, but we have done text, so we'll leave it as text. Press next, and it's asking us about primary keys. Now at this point in your one, I'm imagining that they're going to tell you what to set as the primary key, or ask you to pick a suitable one. Now a suitable one, which is what they're asking for in this one, is anything that's going to make each record unique. So it could be usually an ID or a reference number or a customer number or a member number or something like that. Maybe a car registration. So it says select an appropriate field and set it as the primary key. So to select one, we can't add another one. We've got to choose our primary key as code, because code is obviously the one that's going to make it unique. So we press next, press finish, and we've created our table. If it comes up with this, just press close. Double click on your data, have a look at it, get yourself familiar with it. Notice that we've got zeros and minus ones as our yes, no, which isn't going to be very useful. So if we go to design view, click in yes, no, and change the format of it to yes, no, we can then have a look at it and save it, and we should now have yeses and nos, which makes it much more user friendly. So at this point, you're probably going to have to make relationships. If you don't know how to do that, you need to find out now. So watch the video that shows you how to do relationships, or come and see me. Okay, take screenshots showing the field names and data types used. Place a copy of the screenshot in your evidence document. That is not this. I cannot see from this that this is set as a number. This is set. This could be text for all I know. So you've got to go into design view and print screen it in this view. So do your print screen. I know I'm missing some in here, but put that in your evidence document. Maybe just say data types and field names. Yeah, I know I've spelled it wrong. Okay, so next bit, insert the following 3 records. This is just a case of typing it in at the bottom, and it even says check your data for errors. That's because this is probably worth 3 marks. It's be the stupidest 3 marks you lose if you can't type that into the database without making one mistake. So please check it. Then says to save your database. Click on the disk and that will save your database. I'm going to close off this table. Don't need it open. So step 38, this is where your bulk of your marks are going to be coming from. Produce a report, which when it asks you to produce a report, you know that you're not just going to be making a report. You're going to have to make a query first, because it says shows only the records where. So we've got to do a query to do that bit. So the first bit I'm looking for is the one that tells me which fields to include. So in your database, go to create, query design, add the table. Again, in your one you may have 2 tables. Make sure you're adding the right one, or both if it asks you to add both. Always nice to resize that so you can see what it is you're dealing with. So I'm looking for the one that tells me which fields to include, mainly because it's the logical way of doing it. You know, you need to double click on some. Which ones are a double click on? You've got to look for it in the task. So code, country, product, stock and reorder. Code, country, product, stock, reorder. Price, special and cost. Price, special and cost isn't there. Now the reason for that is because we haven't made it yet. So I'm going to highlight that as done, even though we haven't got cost, because we're going to do that now. Now I'm looking for the one that tells me what cost is, which is this one up here. So it contains a new field called cost, which is calculated at runtime. It's going to calculate the price multiplied by the reorder. So let's scroll across a little bit. Make that bigger so we can see what we're doing. Make sure that you type in your new field name with the right capital letters and you follow it with a colon, not a semicolon, not an equals, not a dash. It's got to be a colon. This tells Access this is the name of my new field. So it was price times reorder. Click on run, check it works. It's quite nicely picked up the pound sign with the decimal places, so we know we're not going to need to faff about with that. Go back into design view. We're happy that that works. So we can highlight that, and it's set to currency with 2 decimal places, so we can highlight that one too. So it shows only the records where the stock is 50 or less. Okay, so stock, scroll back this way. So stock is 50 or less. So if we do the less than arrow, which is pointing to the left, forget about the whole maths crocodile biggest mouth opening towards, it doesn't work when you haven't got something written either side. Well, it makes it more difficult. So less than or equal to 50. Check it works, don't just assume, which it has. So we can go back into design view. So we've done this bit. However, we've got an and. So and the product is not a special order. Now, they're being a bit cheeky with this question really, because you've got special here. So, you know, I can imagine some of you typing in not special, and you run it and you get an error. So you think, I don't know what I've got to type in. So the best thing to do is run it without anything in it and have a look at the field that you're doing. Now, special is yes, no. So, you know, putting in not special, it's not going to make any sense. So we've got yes, no's. So if we look back at the question, and the product is not a special order, so no. So all you've got to do there is type in no. Now don't put speech marks in because it'll stop it working. No, yes, no fields don't have speech marks, only text fields. So let the computer do speech marks. So we've now got no specials. Special order is no. Let's highlight that as now done. And it fits on a page landscape. Now, once it starts talking about how it's going to look and how it's going to be sorted, then you know you're in report mode now. Okay, so you've finished with the query. The only thing we have got to do is to save the query. Now, I always recommend saving it as what the heading of your report is going to be. So if we click on save and we type that in and press OK, it will just save us having to type it in later. So it's got to fit on a single page wide, and it's got to be sorted in order of country. So if we now go to create and then report wizard, don't just double click on the arrow. Please check that in here it says query. Ideally, have this query open before you go to create and then report wizard, because it'll automatically put it in the drop down box. Okay, so then click the double arrow and press next. If it puts some grouping in, it doesn't mention grouping. It may do because of your relationships. You're going to have to kind of just play it by ear a little bit and just see what the question asks and take it out or add it in. But on this one it doesn't ask for anything, so press next. It's got to be ascending order of country, and it's got to be landscape from what I can remember, but I'm going to double check. Fits on landscape, so I can highlight those two as done. Press next. Our heading is now correct because we saved the query right, and this is the report that's been made. So I'm also going to highlight this one so I know I've done that. Please make use of the fact that you've got these on paper in the exam and tick things off and make notes on it and circle things and highlight things. It makes it a lot easier. So at this point, have a look at your report. Does everything fit on nicely? Well, I'm missing the S from special, so that's losing me a mark, but generally that doesn't look too bad and I can actually see most of the data. So in layout view, get rid of that. I'm just going to move price. I don't need it that big, so I'll make it smaller. Move that over. Make special a bit bigger, and then we're not going to lose any daft marks. So it calculates blah blah blah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to this one because it's the most important. If you can't get your name on it, you might as well not even bother doing the database. So because you won't get any marks. So it has your name, centre number, and candidate number on the left below the report. So if we right click on that and go to design view, we've got two footers. We're going to put it in the page footer because we're going to want it on every page if it goes on to 2 pages. It doesn't, so in this one you could actually get away with putting it in the report footer. But good practice to put it in the page footer because then it'll be on all pages. You've got to make sure it goes in a label, not a text box. If you put it in a text box, it will pop up with a little box and ask for your name. And it asks for it to be in the bottom left, but we've got something over here that's already in the bottom left. Well, this is actually the date, and we don't need the date, so I'm going to delete it. If it said we didn't need it, then just leave it in, obviously, but it doesn't, so I'm going to delete it. So, we've now done that one. I'll highlight that, it's the most important one done. We've now got this calculation. Calculates the total cost of the order below the cost column. So in this one, we have got to use a text box, and it has got to go in the report footer. If you put it anywhere else, right, if you saw then, that page moves slightly. Now what that's going to do is it's going to make it go onto 2 pages, which will annoy me. So if we make sure it doesn't affect the edge of the page, then we're not going to get any blank pages. So we've got to do the sum of the cost column. Now there's 3 things I've ever asked before. One of them is sum. So if it asks you for a total of something, then you do sum. If it asks you to find out how many, or the total number of, then you have to do count. And if it asks you to do average, then you have to do AVG, which stands for average in access. So in round brackets then, type in the field. You don't need to worry about square brackets because everything's one word. Go into print preview and check it works, which it does, but we haven't got the currency yet, so we need to sort that out. So back into design view, we can right click on it. I think I missed, so I'm going to right click on it again. It's playing up. Right click, go to properties, and make sure we've clicked on the actual text box, not on the label, and change the format to currency. It then said we needed a label to the left of it, which said total cost of order, which I've done there. Now you can see that it's gone over it quite annoyingly, so if we grab this little grey box, we can move one at a time. So if we now go into print preview, we can check that it looks nice and it's all correct, which it is, and we've got our name at the bottom. And if you got to this stage, then you can be fairly happy. However, for some reason this hasn't gone right on the left of the page, so in layout view I'm going to move that across, and I don't know why it did that, but it's in the right place now. Okay, so it's always worth checking, don't just assume. Back to the task, it says save and print it, so you will just go to save, file, print. I've just closed it, open it back up. Always enable content. Okay, so open your report, file and print, and choose the right printer of the room that you're in. Okay, so the next bit is to produce labels, which is why I've picked this year, because it's something that you don't do very often, but it does crop up every now and then. It's easy, but if you haven't done it for a while, you've probably forgot. So we've got to make a query first because we're showing only some records. So we'll start by doing that. So I'm going to close this one off because we've done with it. Create, query design, add and close, and then check what we're including. So it shows only the field code, product, price and notes. Code, product, price and notes. And get rid of the properties. It then says shows only the records where the country is India. Now we haven't got country here, so I'm sure you know by now you've got to include it. Type it in, check it works, go back to design view and untick the box. Special is yes, and notes field is not blank. Okay, so special is yes, run it, it works, untick it, and the notes field is not blank. Now, they've never really asked this before. They tend to throw these little weird ones in. Now if you can't do that, it's going to be 1 mark. However, if you notice on this one, none of the notes fields are blank anyway, so I don't actually know why they've put it in. If there were some blank ones, then to do that you have to type something in called is not null. Now null means blank, so it is not blank. Okay, so when you run that, it's not going to change anything, but that's what would come up. Okay, so back to design, not SQL view, go back to design view. We have now done all of those things there. Almost. We haven't done the separate lines bit, but we'll come to that in a second. So it's now starting to talk about how it's going to look. Okay, so going to save this. I'm going to call it labels, as it's not quite a report, it's slightly different, and you must have it open or at least have it selected over here, and you go to create labels. Okay, must have it open. Now on this bit you've got to try and find out how many columns of labels they want. So on this one, on this task, it says that it wants fit 2 side by side on one page, and you can see a diagram of it there. So we've got number across as 2, so choose 2 and press next. Check whether it wants you to choose a certain font. On this one it doesn't, so press next. And this is then when you start to build up your label, and you're going to have to kind of read ahead a little bit on this to see what it actually needs to look like. So it's going to be portrait, we can sort that in a minute. We've done it fit 2 side by side, so I can tick that one off. Show appropriate text to identify the fields, so we've got to do that. It's sorted, we can do that in a minute. It's got a heading on the top of each label that says special Indian teas. Okay, so we need that one. And it's also got your name, centre number and candidate on the left bottom of each label. So we're going to put our heading at the top. Then we need to have some text that identifies what each field is. So I've just typed that in code, and then if you double click on it or press the arrow, it will put it in wiggly brackets, and that will include the field next to it. So we've got code, we've then got product, and we've then got price, and finally we have notes. Okay, and then it said you need your name and everything else at the bottom. Done that wrong, make sure you do it correctly. And then you can press next. It then asks you how you want it to be sorted. It asked us to be sorted on product as far as I can remember. Yep. So press next. Heading at the top, labels is a bit daft, so if I just keep it as labels, it doesn't mention a heading, so it won't matter anyway, but press finish and you should have some nice pretty looking labels that look like that. So check we've done everything. It's portrait. If it wanted it landscape, we just change it at the top there. Got appropriate text, sorted. It's got a heading at the top of each label, and it's got our name on the bottom. It does look like this. Save and print the labels. Control and S to save, or click on the disk, click on print, print it out. Easy marks. Okay, so another report that they're asking us to do, and again, this is a weird one, if you like. If it's really short, like only 3 or 4 bullet points, and it mentions the word summary, do you know that it's a different type of query that you need to be doing, and then for a different type of report. So when it's a summary query, this is what you need to do. So it starts off exactly the same. Let's just close all of those. Go to create, query design, add your table. Find out what fields it needs to include. So it needs to include only country, product and stock. Country, product and stock. So we can include those. But then it starts talking about things like counts and sums and averages. Now to do that, if it asks for this, so it's a summary, 4 bullet points, starting to talk about count, you need to click on this button up here. And what it does is it creates another row down the bottom called group by. And what we need to do is we need to then try and figure out what it wants us to do. So it wants us to show the summary of the country, and it says performs a count of the products for each country and calculates the sum of the number of items of stock for each country. So on your query, you know that for country we need to group it by the country because it's for each country. What happens then is we need to perform a count of the number of products. So under product, instead of group by, if you change it to count, and we also change stock to sum because it wanted us to add up the stock. If we have a look at the question, calculates the sum. Then what we can do is, if we then run that, what it does is it groups all the countries together and it adds up. It finds out how many there are for sale and what's the sum of the product, the sum of how much stock they've got. Okay, now the only other bit on this one is that they also only want you to show countries with 2 or more. Oh no, more than 2, sorry. So under the count of the products, if you do greater than 2, it then takes out the ones that were 1. And this is the report. Now, when you've got something this small and they've asked for a report, they're probably not actually going to expect you to make and print the report. So if you look at the next step, it then says save this data in a form which can be imported into a text document, and then import it into your Word document. Now, you can do that in a long-winded way with external data and export as text file, blah blah blah. But what really they're asking you to do is to get that in Word. Now if you click there and do copy, and then you go to your Word document and find out where it's supposed to go, which was after the table. Now, as a table, after the paragraph which ends, we hold per country the value of that stock, which is here. So if we press enter there and just paste that in, it will put that table in. Okay. If we then choose, I'll leave it as it is, because in a minute we've then probably got to make sure that it matches the text that's already in there. Okay, but that is how you would do that one. On here, I'm just going to save this. I'll leave it as query 2 for query 1, just in case we need it in a bit if we break it for whatever reason. So on the Word document, what I'm then going to do is I'm just going to make sure that this looks half decent. So I'm just going to resize everything. I'm going to highlight a bit of that text and paint everything the same. I'm going to make sure that all of our borders are visible by putting in borders. Now they've gone huge because when we did it previously we had it as size 3, so if we just change it back to 1, I don't want to use the border painter, use that to change it to all 1, and we've got our table in there. Okay, so finally it says to spell check and proofread the document and place page breaks if necessary to ensure that tables don't go across 2 columns or pages, bullet lists don't overlap 2 columns or pages, no widows or orphans, which is where a sentence starts on one page and then finishes on another page, and that there are no blank pages. You've then got to save and print it. So it's just a case of going to your document, doing a spell check or looking for things that are underlined. If it's a place name, then obviously it's probably not going to be in the dictionary, so ignore that. Check where you've typed in your data, it's a good opportunity to do that, and then have a look for tables being split, which they're not, and sentences being split across pages, which there is one here. So if we just go here and press enter, it brings it down a page. Okay, so check a bit more carefully than I am, because you should have time anyway, but if you are running out of time, then do it quickly. Okay, so we've saved it and we're going to print that document out now. It says you're now going to prepare a presentation for the company, so therefore you know that you're going to be using PowerPoint. Open up PowerPoint first, click on blank presentation, and then it says you need to import the file M15IT WebRTF and place the text or slides in a new presentation in the presentation software. The text within the file should appear on 6 new slides as headings and bullet lists. So to get the RTF into here, you have to go to new slide and then slides from outline. You then browse to the folder with all the data files in, and it was the one that had the word web in it, and as you can see it's put us our 6 extra slides in. It then says place slide numbers at the bottom of the master slide on the right, and put your name, centre and candidate number in the centre at the bottom of the master slide. So to get to the master slide, you go to View, Slide Master. Make sure you scroll up to the top and click on the top one, otherwise it won't appear on all the slides. So it tells us that we needed the slide numbers on the bottom of the master slide on the right, which is handy because they already are. This hash here is the slide number. However, to make it show up, you've also got to go to Insert and then Slide Number and press the tick box and Apply to All. What you then need to do is make sure your name, centre number, candidate number is at the bottom centre of the master slide. So to do that, you can't just write in this box here, you've got to insert a text box. So I'm going to delete that one out of the way and go to Insert Text Box, click down here, type in the details, make sure it's in the centre, so you get these little lines come up, which helps you do that. And that is everything in this one that you need on the master slide. So if we go to View Normal, then all that should then appear at the bottom. Insert a new slide before slide 1, select a layout for the slide which has a title with a subtitle below. Now we've actually already done that because we opened up PowerPoint first. So this is the slide design. If you didn't have that there, you just insert a new slide and make sure the layout is title slide. So what it's then saying is enter the text developing a website as the title, and enter report by followed by your name as a subtitle. On the last slide there are some errors in the two styles. Identify any errors you can see and correct them. Okay, so we go to the last one, and they're talking about some errors within a style sheet, so we need to look through this and find out where the errors are. So this is the first time I've done this one, so we need to have a look. We know we've got to go from American spellings, so we can take the U out. We need a hash there because that's a hexadecimal. Font family is that's fine. The font size is 36. The spelling of centre needs to be American, so that's ER. And the font weight bold, that looks okay. So then LI, the colour looks right, the font family area looks right, the size 12, text align needs to be left, and they've spelt it wrong. Okay, so that now has no errors on it. Okay, back to the task. Add the following presenter notes to the last slide. So presenter notes are these things at the bottom. If you click on notes, you put the notes in there, and that's that done. Apply the same transition between slides. Okay, so what we need to do is go to transitions, we'll just choose fade and apply to all. Set the bullet points to appear one by one. So what we're going to have to do is on each of them, go to animations, highlight the bullets, go to fade, and on the animation pane we can say start on click, and the same again for each of them. We could probably do this in the master view, to be honest, but I've started now. So quite easy. Next one out, and then finally the last slide. Start and click. Okay. Take screenshot evidence to show that transitions and bullet point animation has been set, and place this in your evidence document. So it's just a case of going to transitions and seeing that that's there, and then you can also say it's been applied to all. So you'd do a print screen of that, and then also do a print screen of each slide to show that the animations are set down this right hand side of the screen. Okay, so print the presentation with 6 slides to a page. Control and P, or file and print, and we want it, rather than full page, we want it 6 slides per page. So it would print like this, and then print only the last slide showing the presenter notes. So to do that one, you would have to say notes page, and we only want to print slide 7, so it would print out like that. It then says you need to prepare an email, blah blah blah. Now this has been taken out of the specification, so you're not going to need to do this, so I'm not going to demonstrate it. But yeah, that is how you do a full paper. Watch this through a few times, but also make sure that you have a look at relationships for databases, because that will come up.